48.
Yeah.
Still here. Again.
Again.
Kind of have a topic today. We'll see if it
Anytime we have
stays
a
there.
topic, it quickly fizzles
It
out.
quickly goes sideways, yeah.
But it is something I struggle with, so. And I have no answer for this whatsoever. Like, not even a pretense of a notion. And then these like broad strokes. It's doing versus being.
We are human beings, not human doings.
Why?
If that gives you any direction.
Yeah. Maybe we should just end it there.
Wisdom.
No, honestly, I, with me, all doing comes out of, I say all doing, most of my doing comes out of a pain body of survival, right? So to negate the possibility of
Imminent demise.
I guess, I have to do. And so I always struggle to like want to do something and then try to figure out which place it's coming out of. Is it coming out of like the pain body's need to do things? And like if I'm triggered and I'm not recognizing it, then is my doing just like a distraction away from whatever the triggers are right now, right? Or am I actually just doing because I'm flowing?
Right. Could be both.
I don't know. See, that's the thing. I actually don't know.
I mean, I guess I personally think that, it's any reason is rarely one singular reason, and it's often a big soup of complicated and sometimes competing reasons to different degrees. Oh, it's 10% that. Oh, it's 30% that. Oh, it's 2% that type of stuff. That's my current theory.
Oh wow, but a lot of cayenne pepper.
Yeah, it's
in it.
really strong.
Oh my god, I just know.
Was that your first sip?
No, but it was my first big sip.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
I
It hits the what's
it,
the
it's whatever it
dangly
is.
thing?
Whenever I was putting all the spices into like cacao in the morning, the light was in such that I couldn't see how much I was shaking, and I'm like, oh, and none of it is coming out. So I kept on pouring.
Turns out,
I think a lot of it came out. Wow, that's spicy. Well, maybe we need this. Maybe we need the stimulation of the throat in order to get some juices flowing.
juices.
Yeah, no, with me, I can really tell, like when I'm triggered, just like into like, oh, I have to do, and I'm almost well, I guess there you go on the last podcast when it turned out to be not the subject of doing, right? That was a lot of triggers that came up on your end.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, look, I'm doing networking for the doing. I'm doing the Russian for the pain body. And with me, it's the safety triggers. It's kind of the same. Wait, is it the same topic now? Maybe we didn't talk about what the opposite of the doing is, right? If you once you discover the nuance of the pain body that you're being triggered in, and then doing comes out of that, right? Because you can feel the charge of the doings out of a pain body, like especially if it's a active pain body.
Yeah.
With me, right now, whenever we're going through our real estate stuff, right? It's like I have those same safety triggers. And no matter what happens goes into it. I almost feel like through the triggers, manifesting wise, there's no way I can manifest anything good. Right? Because everything I see is somehow a barrier to it going good. Like anytime anything happens and I get triggered by it, right? I'm like, oh, look, it's not going good. Do you know what I mean? Not that thing is actually good. It's not necessarily good, but it's not necessarily bad. Do you know what I mean? But everything I see is actually bigger than it needs to be in order to because those they feed the same triggers of unsafety.
So you end up making making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
Both psychologically and energetically. and maybe end up maybe
Psychological and
physically.
energetic is the same thing. It's just, there's no difference between psychology and energetic.
I don't know. Uh, then, but also, physically
Your
too.
thoughts, your pain triggers. So if you by psychological you mean the triggers that you have within your body, right? Your mental thought process that have the neural pathways that lead you into triggers. Are actually just energetic pathways.
Yeah, I guess I mean, like, what's going on inside your skull and what's going on in your higher spirit as the two things.
Higher spirit is at peace at all times. And they're just watching the shit show that is my life.
Just got the popcorn. This is
Yeah,
gonna
I know.
be ooh, real estate stuff. This is gonna be good.
I know. Yeah, the higher self is like, look at this shit show.
guys, coming over. It's another episode.
I repeat, it's a rerun.
It's a rerun.
for 120,000 of times.
I've seen this one before. This one doesn't end well.
That's the thing. Every single trigger that we have is just a rerun of the same shit show that we've had for
It's
40.
different now. She stopped drinking alcohol. Ooh, we'll see what she replaces it with. What could it be? I don't know.
Do you think this is a substitute for alcohol?
Gosh, that is a lot of cayenne.
I know. I'm
Especially
sorry.
if I drink. Don't do that.
It's hard to talk afterwards.
Don't like inhale it like that.
Oh,
'cause
don't inhale it.
It kind of mists the back of your throat where you don't need it.
Do you think this is a substitute for alcohol?
It has taken its place in some capacities, right?
Through pain body?
I don't know. I mean, if we're gonna sit down and talk, I enjoy having something to drink, especially something warm. It could be coffee, it could be tea, it could be cacao. It could have been wine back in the day.
Alcohol is not warm.
No,
I guess warm to the soul. I mean,
warm to the soul. Alcohol is warm to the soul.
Yeah, maybe.
Even like the chilled alcoholic drinks are warm to the soul somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're warm to the soul. They're warm to the gut, at least.
Yeah. Alcohol has that distinct, like, body tingle that you get. Like where you were joking that my elbows goes numb. But something does go numb on my hand. I don't know what it is. You were joking elbow, but what was, I don't know, was it pinky or like?
Should probably have a doctor look at that.
I don't drink, so nothing goes numb anymore.
Problem solved. Take away the problem.
But it has that nice, to some extent, relaxation of the monkey mind.
It does. I mean, it is a.
I think that's why people drink, is to begin with. It takes the stressors that basically are that psychological roundabout way of dealing with.
All your triggers and pain bodies.
Yeah, I guess.
Or, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, the pain bodies, but often the pain bodies indirectly, because it's not what's really going on. It's it's Bill in the office today.
Well, it's the real estate or whatever.
Yeah. So those are the surface level things today, but those aren't the real issues.
Yeah, but it almost makes it harder when you take your triggers or your pain bodies, and you are experiencing them, and let's say you don't recognize that you're experiencing them to the full extent, but you're stressed out, right? Because stress is kind of like the flow of how, right? You're agitated, or you're angry, or you're kind of unsettled, or you're having to do something in order to compensate for the fact that there's a shit show to the side. Then if you don't sit down and have a discussion like you and I try to do, right? Even though sometimes it still starts out on the wrong foot, and then then I tell you, okay, well, this is coming out of this trigger. And you take a drink, right? Which you and I used to do a lot. You almost like don't need. You numb off the current circumstance. And so the chances of you actually looking deeper within this one and connecting it to the underlying cause of anything is probably be almost impossible.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow you to get the depth. And for better or worse, once you're irritated enough, right, and you're not using any outside sources to cope with it, like you're not going into any addictions or you're not feeding it, and it's always at the front of you, then you have to address it. You have to go, well, why in the fuck am I feeling the way I'm feeling right now?
Mm.
And then that is when and then you're willing to ask that question, and then you're willing to actually look into like the energetic of it, right, or even the psychology of it. Then you have an opportunity to actually stir it up. Or by stir it up, I mean it's already stirred, to actually bring it to the surface and shine some light on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to numbing out.
I think cacao in particular kind of does the opposite of what alcohol does in that sense, in that it makes that connection easier to traverse.
Yeah, but that's also our intention too, right?
Yeah.
Like with alcohol, most people have the intentions, oh my gosh, it's 5:00. Thank God, it's been a terrible day. Let me go ahead and numb it all out.
Yeah.
Like I say that because I was in that position a lot. Like, some of the days from work, I couldn't wait to get home and have a glass or two of wine.
Yeah. No, I mean, there was all kinds of, acute triggers. I mean, there's still acute triggers. It's not, everybody has those throughout the day. But it's like, oh, I just want to ignore these triggers. And secretly, I want to, not figure out what it's actually poking.
Mm-hmm.
Turn these triggers into something that I can just, complain about to someone, and or laugh about and or ignore,
Mm-hmm.
instead of explore why these triggers are really poking at me.
Yeah.
And alcohol does a good job of that.
I mean, any addiction does a good job of that. If you have
that's true.
something in your life that is that,
Yeah, that's true.
it doesn't have to be alcohol.
Yeah, it could be something that's ostensibly good, it could be exercise or walks in nature or anything that takes you away from the work, I guess.
Yeah. The work is not easy. Mine, I think I got used to mine. That was the first kick was a lot.
Yeah, that inhaled one was a lot.
Okay. So, doing.
So
Being.
doing, yeah, I guess some people, maybe everybody, does stuff partially in response, at least partially, maybe wholly in response to some sort of pain body thing.
To begin with, without awareness, I think we do most of the stuff from the
Right.
being body. Like, right, if my safety is a trigger for me, right, and if I'm just triggered into whatever versions of unsafety, then everything I do, it's either to distract me, which is what we just talked about, which is alcohol, right? Or any kind of addiction. Like, there's the doing for the purpose of distraction, right? Or there's the doing for the purpose of solving the problem that you do not know that you're currently stressed out about.
Right.
And that's what I do.
Yeah, solving or soothing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Soothing it with action. With me, it's soothing
Right.
with action.
Right. Whether that's
Well, the current problem, if the current problem is, let's say, shallower than the deeper pain body, so the doing solves in my mind, right, in my broken mind, the idea that this can be solved with a solution based on the doing of addressing this small thing.
Yeah.
But then the doing itself could be the right thing to do still.
Right.
But
that's
not
the thing. The action may very well be the right thing to do. It may very well be something that needs to happen no matter what. But it is kind of one of those situations where, the reasoning behind it becomes important.
Yeah. I mean, we say this like on every single podcast.
Yeah.
So in this case, right, so one, maybe recognize that what is the doing has within it, since we talk about that doing a lot. And maybe the part that we actually struggle with is, what does being look like?
Yeah. Before we get to being, just to clarify, it's like, you're going to do something, why are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to do that in order to fix this problem, fix this issue, deal with this situation. Yes, on the surface, that's true. And, again, that still might need to be done. And then what does that get you? What gets you out of that situation? Okay, well, why is getting out of that situation so important? You know, and again, there's all these surface level things that are the obvious answers that come to mind. Oh, well, I've got to get out of. Oh, I've got to pay the bills. Oh, I've got to do whatever. Which okay, that's probably true and all that. But digging down, there is, it's making you feel a certain way and you don't like it. You know, it feels like it's hanging over your head, or it feels like it's making you unsafe, or it's uncomfortable, or something like that. That's where the
Hanging over your head is very shallow.
it is very
What I mean
shallow.
is by shallow, I mean like you're not if the hanging over your head is the answer, you're not at the depth.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you saying are you going back to like how to dig it into the depth of it, which is the why,
I
and
mean,
why?
yeah, we could, or
No,
we've done
you're
it.
just kind of pointing that out.
Yeah, I'm just
That
saying.
is when you would do that.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying that the obvious answer to why you're doing whatever it is not the deep answer.
Yeah.
There's a deep answer that ends up something like, because I never felt loved as a kid, or because I felt unsafe my whole life, or something like that, right? Which is, it's not obvious that that's why, you're pissed off at Bill at work. That's not a straight line into anybody's mind that those two things are connected, but they are. They are through, oh, you get there if you why all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we say that literally every episode, but
Mhm.
it's probably the most important thing. Is the opposite of doing being? Can you be, or are you doing being? What does being look like? Is that just sitting there? But then you're doing sitting. If you're not doing anything, are you doing nothing? Questions for the ages.
Yeah, no, I struggle with the being. I guess with me, my triggers can be recognized. Like I can say that it is a little bit easier for me now to see the trigger of unsafety being triggered into my doing. Like that is a little bit easier of a path for me to wrap my head around, right? To where I won't spend a week or even days in it. I might spend 10 minutes or 20 minutes in it, being lost before I recognize the deeper trigger of, oh, look, it's the safety thing again. And then I go, okay, well, this is where it's coming from. So it looks like I'm back in the safety trigger, right? And so then I can kind of go, okay, I'm just being triggered into safety. And so like the recognition of that, the depth of that trigger just kind of diffuses this particular doing, right? But then after that, in this case, the doing still has to happen in order to
Continue
continue
with life.
to continue to life, right?
Yeah.
But I can at least see, out of space in which I'm approaching this project with. I'm approaching it out of fear.
Right.
I'm approaching it out of like just love and excitement for a new adventure.
Right. And, even if it is something that, you, I guess, have to do, that isn't something you are excited about, at the very least, if you bring that awareness to it, you're like, oh, well, I think you can, if you recognize why you're doing it, you can change why you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. So I think the recognition of the fact, oh, guess what? There's a good portion of this act that I have to do that is coming out of the fear, right? And then, I yelled at you over it and on all that. It's just because I'm being triggered into safety. Like this deep down still drills down into safety. And then I can like become aware of it, right? And so now when we're gonna do it, hopefully I'm like excited about it and I am seeing this as just like, oh look, here's a thing we will do together and it's a project and it's
Yeah.
fun and it's making things better versus worse off. And then,
Yeah.
I mean physically making something better.
Right. Improving something.
Yeah, improving something.
Bringing more beauty into the world.
Yeah. And so that changes the aspect of that. But I guess the question that I still don't have the answer to and that I struggle with, then does that become being? Does that just being in that flow and being and approaching it from like, oh look, this can be something that is a net negative to me and actually feeds my pain body. But through recognition and awareness, I am still doing the same thing. And that same thing is actually I'm not actively trying to instill the opposite of my pain body into it. I just see what the pain body is. It kind of goes away on its own and sits on the side as like this thing that, yeah, oh, look, it could be this, but it's not that. And it kind of becomes its own thing.
Yeah.
And its own thing is almost, what I feel about it, which is extra interesting, is it almost feels like the being doesn't actually have any signatures to it outside of the flow.
Right.
And the flow does happen to have love and light in it. But it's like a natural energy as opposed to any insertion that you would have, right? Sometimes I remember being cranky as a kid, which I can relate to, like Annabelle being cranky, right? And I don't know why I'm cranky. Like, I don't know. That was just a stage I went through when I was cranky. And my mom would never really say, like, look at the energy you're bringing into this. How do you think this is going to go if this is the energy you're bringing into this?
Oh, really?
Yeah. She'd always say.
Huh.
And I knew she was right? But then I'm cranky. Just like, so I can relate to animals.
And that just makes you even angrier.
Well, to some extent, yes. I know she's, to begin with, right? There's that jolt of like, oh, authority, deny authority, for whatever reason.
Yeah. No, there's nothing worse than when you're cranky and someone else is right and you're like, it just makes you angrier.
Right about you being wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
As a child that makes you really angry. Like, it made me angry when I was a kid. And obviously what I was doing is I was not actually exploring while I was cranky, right? But then eventually, just like Annabelle, she goes through the same cycles that I would go through. And like, it takes 10 minutes at most, usually. And then you completely dissipate the crankiness. Like, you're like, okay, that was complete useless overreaction to whatever it is that was happening. You feel slightly guilty about it, slightly shameful about it, right? And then you go back, right? But what's interesting is when you discharge and acknowledge the crankiness and acknowledge the anger, right? Or acknowledge that outburst of energy, what comes out of it afterwards is the opposite energy, but without any doing. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm cranky and the energy is negativity or even like a energetic drain on me, and then even like the situation that I'm participating in or the circumstances thereof, right? If it's a drain, then it's a draining energy. But it's draining energy through the doing of the stirred pain body being unaddressed.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a sexual funnel of energetic drain.
Yeah.
But when you leave that space and you go into, let's say, what I would right now classify as being, I don't know for sure if this is being, but this is the closest I have gotten to in this awareness of being. The energy of the drain disappears, right? So you're not actually in the clusterfuck of shit that is just a tornado to the bottom of the shit pit. But you're in this, I would say, like, elevated place of being. And in this case, I actually use being as like this magical, almost like euphoric state of like peace.
Yeah.
And the energy that comes in is not a drain, but it's almost like an influx that has nothing to do with you.
Right. It's almost like instead of a drain, it's like a boost.
But
almost,
it's like an alignment boost.
Right.
Like, it's almost like a cosmic, like, let's say the heavens open up and then you just have this thing pouring at you that is not even the baseline, but it's like an influx of goodness.
Instead of the universe sucking energy out of you, it's like the universe is pumping energy into you.
Yeah.
And I know from personal experience, it will go a lot better.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's obvious.
At one time, speaking of real estate things, I was in a really shitty mood and I didn't want to do it, but I went over and I changed out a ceiling fan, and every step of that went wrong, and I was in a bad mood, and that made the mood worse, and it was horrible, and it took 3 times longer than it should have taken, and
Yeah, at that point, it probably would have been better not to do the ceiling fan
it would have been better not to do the
and
ceiling
just
fan.
like wait for another day.
Yes,
Yeah.
because like I've changed dozens of ceiling fans in my life, uh, and that was easily the longest one by far, by
Yeah.
far. And I've done them since then, I think, and it would, it if you go into it with a bad mood, yeah, but I just had a whole bad energy about me that whole day,
Yeah.
and that just and I was doing it for pain body reasons as well.
What was the pain body? Just needing to have it done? Or I was angry because you didn't do it?
Um,
Yeah, that's usually your pain body.
yeah,
It's
I
me
think it
being
was.
angry
I
at you.
think it needed to be done, and you were angry at me for it not being done, and I'm like, screw it, I'll just go do it right now, and I went and I did it, but I was,
It's a chainsaw repeat, except we weren't in
yeah,
the same cycle. Isn't that interesting?
and it was uh, you know, there was resentment over me having to do it right now, and it was just a salad spinner of shit.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that right after we have the chainsaw discussion, we now have a desperate need for a chainsaw in our backyard? Those things are like that big around. They're sizable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 2 branches fell out of our tree. The same tree. Sycamore tree, as it were.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of storms coming through.
It's been weirdly stormy this summer.
Interestingly. Because
Mm.
usually summers are pretty calm for us.
Yeah. Yeah, sure enough. Now we need it.
How does that factor in? Do you think we manifested the need for a chainsaw and had our branches fall down? Or do you think like this gives you an opportunity to evaluate how you approach the chainsaw? Do you think that's what it was?
Maybe both. I mean, I already had a need for it. All those pine tree things. I'm
I
like,
forgot about that.
because I'm like, I gotta chop those up. And then there's the other one that was there from before I think it fell down while we were gone. It's not our branch, but obviously we're the ones who are gonna have to clean it up.
Yeah, our neighbors tend to not clean up their wood.
So there's no lack of stuff to chop up with a chainsaw. But now we have stuff that only a chainsaw can cut through because it's just too big for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to give background. So with me, some no, the triggers don't necessarily make sense, right?
That's
like,
the thing.
Like
There's a bizarre dotted line connection, but it's there. The connection's there.
So just kind of an overview what we're talking about. That last time we talked about Elliott triggers, like of learning Russian or redoing our house to fiber. But with me, this is the dotted line is if we are working on the project, right, and we need certain tools in order to make sure that this project is done. In this case, it's a chainsaw, right? So like we have some big trees that need to be taken down. And then, in our case, we're not renting the big dumpsters in order to dispose of them. We're cheap asses. And so we're actually trying to get the branches as small as possible in order to either use them as wood if they're big enough later or just throw away in the garbage. And so we took down the tree and then ended up using just the small pruners for the tree itself.
Mm-hmm.
But then the big stump at the end was a chainsaw thing.
Yeah, there's no way to get through it.
Yeah.
Without
and
a chainsaw or something.
My pain body, I have no idea how this is a thing, is that 2-cycle engines are like the worst to maintain. I just know they're the worst to maintain. My father struggles with the 2-cycle engines, but better off than you are. No, my ex-boyfriend was an expert in 2-cycle engines. So I think that's a pain body that still registers
I think it
on
might
you.
be.
Yeah. So which is maybe another thing that you should reflect on here. And maybe the reason why 2-cycle engines don't work for you is because you know how proud I am of my ex-boyfriend being an expert at 2-cycle engines. Anyway, and so with me, I know that Elliot is not good at 2-cycle engines. Now, this is right. How superficial and idiotic is this? But that's a trigger for me, right? because I know he's not good at it. I know they're hard to maintain. And then I know that eventually they will not work for us.
In my defense, the generator is a 4-cycle engine.
Oh, okay. Whatever. Anything gas operated that is a pull chain.
Small
pull chain things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because with you just choke them and flood them.
Chainsaws, leaf blowers, little generator, lawnmowers.
Yeah. In fact, we got rid of most of our 2-cycle things because they're just all flooded all the time. And then we had a guy come in. Do you remember we one time we paid the guy come in and he fixed like all of them in like 30 minutes.
And then we sold them all.
We sold them all. Yeah,
it works. Come by, it works. Recently serviced, works fine.
Yeah.
I don't want to start it, but it works.
Yeah, right. So yeah, maybe there you go. I'm not trying to point a finger at you, but maybe that's another reason why you struggle with 2 cycles, because you somehow think that I judge you because you're worse off than my ex-boyfriend at it, who has not been in the picture for like 25 years, but Elliot still hasn't.
That has crossed my mind before. That he was very mechanically inclined.
Well, he's literally a mechanic.
Yeah. And I'm reasonably mechanically inclined, but I'm not an expert. I don't have any training or anything in these things.
His thing, his pain body, now that I can kind of like look back at somebody who I knew 30 years ago. Is that 30 years? Yeah, I guess maybe. His pain body is he was poor. And so anytime he would get something, he would cherish the heck out of it and then maintain it immaculately because it was so cherished, because the scarcity of not having things. You're not getting
another one, so you better take care of it.
Yeah, and with him, to begin with, when he was in high school, he made money because they were super, super poor, mowing old ladies' lawns in his neighborhood. And right, so to him, like, literally, not only do I maintain it, but my livelihood and survival like depends on it, right?
Yeah.
And and so with him, like his parents were so broke and they were on like brink of bankruptcy or through multiple bankruptcy at all times, that sometimes the money that he made, not sometimes, at all times, the money that he made mowing lawns actually paid for his family's dinners.
That's rough for a teenager.
Yeah, for a 15-year-old or
really
14-year-old, right? Yeah, so both of us are going to try not to cry now.
Yeah, me too.
No, but
that's
right. Right. Maybe we need to pause here in case you need to take this chunk out. No, and so yeah, so with him, imagine the pain body associated with maintaining something that in this case, a working lawnmower and a working weed eater, in order to make sure that your family has food on the table.
Right.
Because your parents are not able to provide you with food because they're fucked up on their own level. Right. So yeah, my first experience with American culture, right? Like, because I moved to the United States and I'm not dating anyone, like seriously. And then I meet him and he's my first American experience, right? I mean, I have no idea what to expect as far as American families go. And my first experience of American family is his family, which, it just,
right.
Just like coming here to United States, and then, of course, we have no money. We live in roach-infested apartments. My parents are working minimum wage.
I'm not laughing at the roach-infested. I'm not laughing at the story behind the roach-infested thing. When someone came over and was I'm sorry, they weren't good enough for you.
Which was another pain body, right? And so the right, we were living in this situation. But to me, it is actually great because one, we have running water and we have food. So to me, the circumstances of running water and food, it is great. And I know I say this probably on most of the podcast, but and then two, the fact that my parents have a job is a huge thing. And even though, it's at what was minimum wage, $5.15 at the time, even though it's at like $5 an hour, by both of them working $5 an hour and then with occasional overtime, we can at least make ends meet and then like continue to have food and can continue to have shelter and then like see a way out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And then so I'm like, okay, well, here's the United States and like we're plowing our way out of it. Like at the time I wasn't working. I didn't get a job until I was No, I was only working summer jobs at the summer camp. Not speaking any English, which is like, how do you, I guess this is probably a good place to learn English.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was a good place because, there's 2 or 3-year-olds learning English.
Uh-huh.
And here I am learning English with them. So I'm reading children books to them as I'm learning English.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, you kind of, when you learn a language as an adult, you kind of like do it from like see spot run all the way up to
Yeah.
Shakespeare or whatever.
Yeah. No, it was kind of nice to go into summer camp with the 3-year-olds because like they're learning, I'm learning. We're kind of on the same level of stupidity as far as language goes. Yeah. Anyway, and so I'm kind of like deviating onto all kinds of directions. So then when I come in and I meet him and I start dating him and I come into his household, they have a house, which we don't, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, well, look, there's a house. But then like I start to see the background behind the circumstances of the financial ruin here, right? Like, oh yeah, the house is there, but the mortgage payments are barely being made. Like, oh, the house is there, but they're swimming in credit card debt. Oh, the house is there, but they literally cannot have food on the table. And they keep on going to the same damn grocery store and bouncing check. At the time, you wrote checks in order to pay for food, I guess, if you didn't have credit cards.
Yeah.
And then, but they knew they could write the check. So back in the olden days, you would write a check.
Yeah. This is, if you do it knowingly, that's like a felony.
Yeah, they would do it knowingly. So they would write a check, let's say for $30 or $40 of whatever the grocery store.
Back when that could buy food.
Yeah. And then the food is the cheapest thing they could possibly get, right? It's the cheapest white bread, it's the cheapest bologna, it's the cheapest, with me, the egg noodles and the tomato sauce is that, right? And then she would write the check knowing so back in the olden day, when you would write a check, the grocery store would not know that it would not run, like there was no money in the checking account and they would bounce back.
I think still with checks, that's the case.
Oh, it's still the case? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But they, now there's, the check bounced, $25 fee immediately. Because the bank charges you for depositing a bad check.
Back then, it was there too.
We've gotten bad checks and we've deposited them not knowing. And it's like, plus 1,000. Just joking, minus 1,000, minus 25 for the fee of it. And it's like, why am I stuck with this? I didn't write the bad check. So then you got to go hunt down the person who wrote the bad check and get the money back out of them. And then the extra money.
Yeah, no, I think they would try to get the money out of her. But in her case, her knowing that, she would just hope that she had enough money. Basically it's that or I have no food to feed my children.
I mean, that sucks, but that's understandable.
Yeah. Anyway, so once I went into that family and I found because you can kind of, at first you come in and you don't know, but then sooner or later you can kind of see. And the condition of the house was, not great and nobody would maintain anything. And it would just the piles of crap, of course I have a thing with cleanliness. So we would never have piles of crap anywhere. But, they're just dirty clothes and there's no clothes to wear because nobody wants to do the laundry because half the time there's no laundry detergent, and so sometimes the solution to clothes is just going to Kmart and buying a t-shirt as opposed to just doing laundry. So but that it's systematic.
And what's awful is that if you're in that situation, you don't get any sort of bulk buying power. If you're buying one roll of toilet paper at the dollar store,
there's no buying power. Period. It's just survival.
Yeah, but if you're
in the hole and you're just trying to come out of it.
Yeah, but it compounds it because you're forced into buying more expensive one-off things.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Which only makes it worse.
Yeah, I mean, besides that is they're already in credit card debt. They're already not making their mortgage payments, and they already cannot buy food. But the second they get any kind of influx of money, they blow it. That's what I did understand. Look, if you get, I don't know what, a bonus at work or whatever.
Tax refund.
Yeah, whatever it is. When the money comes in, my thought process, if I was in the scarcity mindset of survival, would be okay, well, let's pay off as much debt as possible.
Dig myself out of the hole, at least
to dig myself out. But no, they literally at some point went and bought a car. Now, it wasn't a new car, but it was a used car. But they had no business in buying it. I don't even know how they got that loan. I think it was a predatory loan from a company knowing that they can basically give him a loan and then yank the car back and then charge him out of wazoo for, you know, it was just, anyway. So how did I even get onto this? Safety. Chainsaws and safety. Yeah. So with me not having the right tool, right, or not being able to maintain something that is needed in order to climb out of an unsafety situation is kind of like a personal decision of a person, right? It was their decision to be in that situation and then not to be able to climb out of that situation actually makes the situation worse. Through knowing that they were taking actions that were not good in the good intent or good alignment with like the safety of their children, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Because the stress of that situation then compounded onto the children. And so what I was witnessing with him as my boyfriend and then his younger brother was just basically the fallout of that family, right? Of how, his brother was diagnosed with ADHD. And then my boyfriend was the only one that ever graduated high school in his family. And that was a huge accomplishment for them. The only reason he graduated high school is because he was dating me. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to continue to go to school? Like that didn't even make sense. But it was a huge thing. And so, right. So I saw that safety. So maybe with me, the two cycle engines kind of like them not working also pipes into my pain body of unsafety because I saw how them not working looks like with this family. And so, yeah, with me, then it goes into like, oh, look, it's not working. It's a tool that I need in order to get the job done. If this job is not done, then this equates to X number of dollars per month. I know that's not actually a direct line, but somehow extrapolated into that line of less of income, and less of income relates to no food, no shelter, ... unsafety. I die alone on the streets of, I don't know where, Agrabah, I guess. J-Town. Right. You drive through J-Town right now. I'm like, I don't think anyone's dying on the streets alone of J-Town. It seems like Agrabah is kind of where I would die.
Agrabah? Yeah. Like Aladdin?
Aladdin's Agrabah. Yeah. I think the pain body of dying on the streets alone comes down to Agrabah, because the pain body that I can remember that is being triggered is that me of a young boy on the streets of Agrabah.
That Arabian Nights song in my head now.
Sorry.
I like that.
I like that cartoon.
The musical was good too.
Oh my gosh, the Broadway musical was amazing. If anyone's ever in New York and they can see Aladdin as a Broadway musical.
Right.
It's so good.
The opposite of dying on the streets alone is being privileged enough to go see Broadway musicals in New York.
He said, do you think
that's the polar opposite. I could go to New York and watch a Broadway musical, which none of that is cheap.
But you can get Broadway musicals, like if
off Broadway.
No, you can go to Broadway and then like the will call or like the
last minute type thing?
Last minute things are like half off. So like basically whatever seats they did not fill, you can stand there. Seats are not guaranteed, but if it's a small group, you can get seats.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I knew that, but we're usually when we're in New York, we're only there for like 2 days, and so the chances of us not seeing that, like we can't risk it.
Yeah.
So we just end up getting the tickets.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got you bought me a chainsaw. I had wanted a chainsaw for a while, and you were like, "That's a bad idea. You're not going to maintain it. It's going to fall to pieces. It's never going to work." And I'm like, "No, I'll maintain it." So you bought me a chainsaw for 2 Christmases ago,
I guess. Gas one.
Yeah, a very nice chainsaw.
They have electric chainsaws. They're really expensive and really nice.
Your dad had an electric chainsaw, but it only worked for 5 minutes cutting through stuff. And then it's like, wait 30 minutes to charge the battery. And so maybe things have come a long way in 5 or 10 years. I don't know. But
I don't know how popular electric chainsaws are. Maybe that's a research point as well. Oh, just researching how to maintain 2-cycle engines.
Well, right. And so I have always known that was your thing. And so my thing is, not letting you down.
Yeah, because that's your pain body.
Right. Because if I let you down, then you're not going to love me.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to totally die alone.
We're both dying alone for different
I'm an
reasons.
acrobat, you're an acrobat. We're both dying alone right next to each other.
At least we're together.
Together, but alone together. And so when you gave it to me, you're like, oh yeah, they said just, stop on in and they'll teach everything about it. So I went in, I got the full training, and I'm like, how do I store it? Do I dump the fluids out?
Yeah,
What do I
'cause-
use? And I'm taking notes because I'm like, I gotta, A, make sure I don't let her down, and B, if I can prove her wrong, that's even better. Pain body soup. And so I did follow all the instructions I was given. And when we needed it for a different project, like the day before, I sharpened it up. I went outside.
Don't caveat this. You follow the instructions they give, and you keep on flooding the damn thing. So admit to that.
I'm getting there. It isn't flooded yet. I go outside and I start it up. It works great. I turn it. It runs for 10 seconds. I'm like, it runs. I turn it off. That alone probably flooded it because I was probably still choked or something when I ran it. Anyway, we get to where we need it. I can't start it. I yank on that cord 100 something times and it will not start.
Probably flooding it more.
Probably flooding it more.
Mm-hmm.
And when you flood it, it's A is flooded, B that messes up the spark plug, all kinds of compounds itself. And so at that point, we don't have a working chainsaw, and we needed a chainsaw.
Yeah, there's two houses.
We worked our way through it with the alternate tools, so that time it worked. But we didn't have
alternate tools that I provided to you.
You got me. You got me
on the electric end of things.
On the electric end of things. That at first I'm like, I don't need this, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most useful tool ever. It takes the place of a chainsaw.
Link in Amazon to the Amazon account.
Oh yeah, Amazon affiliate links. So just the other day we're talking about all this, and I had taken the spark plug out, cleaned it, left it out so it could all evaporate and all that good stuff. And as we're talking about this, as you're talking about your pain body and it's triggering mine,
mm-hmm.
of letting you down, I also, there's no point in having broken tools. That doesn't make sense, especially nice, expensive broken tools.
Yeah.
So, you drooling on me?
I don't know.
So, yeah, it is just a pain body soup.
Yeah, no, in this case, right, I'm angry at you for the chainsaw because it went. So the trigger with me is, look, here's the thing that goes exactly how I thought it would go, right? So I told you that this is not going to be something that is going to be relied on because you don't know how to use it. So with me, it's the trust and safety thing that is being triggered. So I have to trust you with this tool that then I rely on for us as business owners in order, right? So that is, I'm just trying to point out that is how the propagation of thought goes into the unsafety, right? Like so with me, the not trusting triggers unsafety, and then unsafety is the core, right? So trust issues because of unsafety.
Yeah.
And then especially in this case, because, if I see something coming, like if I know that this is how it's going to go, right? And you pointed out, like, am I manifesting that? Yes, probably, in some way. And then you're manifesting it on your end, right? So we're compounding the chainsaw cluster situation. But so both of those, like, combiningly, right, reflect of like, look how the simple notions of chainsaw working or not working and how we can use it and whose responsibility is it. And I told you so conversation. It has nothing really to do with chainsaw. In my case, it's a trust, and then it automatically transfers into safety.
Yeah.
And so it's like, right, like if I don't take time to explore that, you and I just fighting over a damn chainsaw.
Right. Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
Well,
and then your end is
on my end. I am letting you down. B, I am feeling untrustworthy. Untrustworthy. And and I'm like, I took the lessons, and I'm thinking, I like literally did what I was supposed to do. Asterisk, I should have learned more, and probably don't turn off a cold chainsaw like that. Probably you learn how to actually start it. Do 5 minutes of research on unplugging a chainsaw. Yes, all that is true. It's totally my fault. But it's, all these things are triggering me into, I'm not loved. She doesn't love me because I can't maintain a chainsaw, because I can't do this. And it has nothing to do with the chainsaw.
Right.
But,
yeah.
but it was amazing to just watch where my mind would go.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, but I can fix this. The first place I go is I can fix this because at the surface it's all about the chainsaw. I'm like, I'm gonna leave this conversation with you. I'm gonna pull out my phone. I'm gonna figure out how to unplug the chainsaw. I'm gonna learn how to use it properly. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna go look. See, you still love me. I may even have the Jason mask to make it funny because if I can add some humor to it, that'll diffuse it.
Yeah, with you, you use humor, I guess, to diffuse uncomfortable situations.
And so I'm like, see, problem solved. Everything's fine. ...
I'm lovable.
And now I'm lovable again because I have fixed the chainsaw.
And I'm funny.
And I did it in a funny way. Right? So right? So that's where oh my gosh, that's just where I want to go. I want to fix the symptom. I'm like, oh, look, I can fix the symptom. And then, ta-da, it's all fine and good. We can move on. You're no longer angry. You're safe because we have a chainsaw. I'm loved because I fixed the chainsaw. Everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with the chainsaw.
Yeah, no, surface dwelling just doesn't make sense.
That said, chainsaw still has to get fixed.
Yeah. No, we still need a chainsaw.
Still need a chainsaw.
Yeah, but right, if we just live our life through like, oh well, we had a fight over a chainsaw, that doesn't take us anywhere.
Right.
Because next time it's going to be a mower, or next time it's going to be, I don't know, whatever, a tire or whatever.
Yeah.
2-cycle
tires.
Well, no, you brought up the fact that our car does not have a jack and doesn't have a spare tire, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like with me, I'm like, shit. That is like, I did not know this, but now I'm unsafe.
And now we just right. I mean, every car we've ever owned except this one has had a spare tire, which is fine. And like on my, I have a checklist for travel, and one of them is check spare tire pressure. And anytime we'd go on a road trip, I would check it most of the time.
Well, maybe people don't travel with these type of cars.
And so when we got the car, I'm like, well, what do people do? And they're like, you buy a pump. So I bought a pump.
Yeah.
Little battery powered pump, and you buy a patch kit, to patch it. Which I have patched one tire in my life.
Unsuccessfully.
Quasi-successfully.
Well, the patch kit was old too.
It still loses air. The patch kit was over 10 years old, yeah. And I don't think...
Might have been a user error as well.
Huh?
Might have been a user error as well. I'll blame it on you as unlovable.
Probably not. I think...
like, damn it,
I think I did everything right, and you're still driving on it, so I deserve all the love.
No one's driving it.
Our son's driving. Our son's driving.
The person who matters the most to us is driving on that damn tire.
But then I realized, because, it was a front tire, and I didn't take it off when I fixed that. And you just turn the tire out and you roll it forward or backwards so that it's right there, and you do it right there. But at some point I realized, what if it's the back tire? I can't.
Yeah.
There's no access to when you do it, you have to like ream the hole out with this little like goofy plunger thing. I think that's the thing, is I need to do that more to make that hole bigger in order to fill it up.
The thing is, my thought process, and I guess this is
but there's no jack to take that tire off.
Yeah, but this is also ... The reason why this is triggering me into unsafety is I have to trust you to do this right.
To patch a tire? To
patch a tire right, and you have already patched a tire once, and it's not 100% successful. Do you see what I mean? So with me, when you said like, wait, we don't have when I realized just a couple of days ago that we don't have a spare.
Well, you knew we didn't have a spare because we bought the pump.
I know.
I bought the pump and I said, it doesn't come with the spare. We need to get a pump. You're like, okay.
None of it. The safety is only being triggered right now. When you said all of that, I didn't have any safety triggers. But now that I have been in the safety triggers for the last, I don't know, 2 weeks or so, or however many weeks, like I'm noticing myself going through some sort of safety trigger. Right, that's the thing, is it's dormant until somehow it's activated. And then once it's activated, everything falls into that pit hole.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, even though I heard the fact that we didn't have a spare, and then you bought things necessary to fix it with a patch kit. None of it actually mattered at all. Like when we first got the car, I'm like, well, whatever. It doesn't, I mean, why would I be afraid of that? That fear wasn't spiking. But now that we have come back from the trip, right? And then I saw, Kara and Nate doing their thing on the side of the road with their van.
That's what it was that made me think of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we started talking about it, and all of it triggered because currently that is the trigger that is alive in my body. And all of a sudden, I do realize that our car does not have a spare. And I'm like, wait, but Ellie doesn't know how to patch tires. Oh my gosh. And then wait, do we have the stuff? And you're like, we have some of the stuff. And you're like, wait, we don't have a jack. And so all of those things literally just compound and reactivate the trust and on safety, because that is what I'm going through right now. Right. And so like the doing, right. This is also where it's coming in. The doing under the triggers, or the being, also affects how you receive the same information, right? You can receive the same message or the same information. And if your body is currently in some sort of triggered aspect of self where you're just in general or kind of on the edge, or you're trying to process something and things are coming up, and so everything goes into that pit hole in order for you to allow it to come, then you're more likely to receive the same information in very different ways, right?
Yeah.
If my safety thing wasn't triggered, and then, because when the chainsaw wasn't working, and when it did not work, and then we used the other tools, I wasn't triggered.
Because we solved the problem?
No, I just wasn't triggered. When we were at the house, and then we didn't have the chainsaw because we already knew it wasn't working, but then you couldn't really saw off the thing with the other thing. You're like, oh, I just need the chainsaw for this. I wasn't triggered. That was like 3 weeks ago, right? Right. At the time where it was happening, that was not a live trigger for me. It's almost like,
Do you know what it was that brought that up?
I have no idea. So yeah. So maybe the other discussion is, at some point, I was receiving all the inputs that should have been triggered into the trust and safety or chainsaw not working, because it hasn't been working for months. But only now, I think what it is the cumulative multiplier of number of less of income. I think that's what it is, right? So the bigger the dollar amount that is associated.
Imaginary dollar amount.
Yes, the lack of imaginary dollar amount that is associated with the loss, associated with the prospect of this is what it is. But I'm like, well, that still doesn't make sense, because I'm imagining the dollar amount and I know that there's loss associated, right? So like,
right, but just because it's not real doesn't mean it's not real to you.
Yeah, no. So, but then I can actually look at the circumstances as the trigger. Do you know what I mean? There's something else. The safety is triggering. It's something else that is triggering the safety. And, there's a cyclical nature of a pain body too. Each pain body has a cyclical nature of self.
Yeah, they repeat.
Yeah. And so like, so I'm thinking maybe this is it, but I don't want to, of course, take away excuse from the actual trigger. But if you address the pain body and acknowledge that, and let's say with me, it's trust and safety, right? And I kind of like worked with it, and I can see things going into it and things going out of it. And I'm trying to actualize and I'm trying to release, because sometimes it's released in chunks. Like sometimes the energy is so big. Because with me, it's like kind of like, like in and out. Is it called in and out? Inside out? The core emotions, right? Safety is the core, right? And so the core holds the most density of me and within my, solar plexus, as far as, and then my sacrum, as far as like where unsafety is. So as you release little, pats of it, you kind of go in that cyclical nature, right? So you acknowledge it, you work with it, you release it. And then you're kind of like, oh, okay, everything is hunky-dory. But then sooner or later, you loop back into another trigger, another acknowledgement, and then another release. And that's kind of a cycle. And you would almost cycle for a while until you kind of like almost empty out. If it's a sack that you're holding energy in, you almost empty out those sacks to where the triggers will get less and less and less and less. but there will be the same triggers.
Yeah. No,
and then time frame between acknowledgement, triggering recognition, acknowledgement, and then release will be smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's that
happens more often.
It's the golden ratio Fibonacci sequence pattern of energy release. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you would start with trigger, acknowledgement, or awareness and acknowledgement, and then working on the release, and then the release of the energy, right? But then you would come around into the next reiteration of it, but this would be a smaller, the conical shape. And then eventually, right, you're over here in the signature where the trigger and awareness and release is like this. And that's kind of the propagation of how the cycle starts.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I say this because a lot of the times I hear a lot of people saying this, and I thought this too. Oh my gosh, I really thought I was past this, right? Like, oh my gosh, look at this clusterfuck of shit and clusterfuck of shit. And to begin with, when we said like, our higher self is watching the shit show of the same reiteration, it almost feels, you can almost feel like, oh my gosh, well, how many times am I going to go through it? Each reiteration is an amazing progress, because what you might or might not recognize is the time difference between trigger and then recognition and release gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Does it ever go away? No, I don't think so. But then sooner or later, it just becomes kind of like one instance. Trigger, recognition, release is almost like that.
Yeah.
So you will still get trigger, but recognition, release is right there, right behind it.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
at some point, 5 years ago, I would have been angry about the chainsaw and not saw that the chainsaw has nothing to do with you. And it's all on me being triggered into trust and safety, probably for at least 3 or 4 days.
And I would have been losing it about fixing that chainsaw, because fixing the chainsaw is the only way to earn back your love. And that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And it would have been it. And I would dive into it obsession style until I know everything about 2-cycle engines and become as expert as I can, which, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, for the wrong reason.
But 100% for the wrong reason.
Yeah, right. And now, obviously, I'm still not there, but for this particular one, I am, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm like, okay, look, trigger, I get angry, because I'm triggered, and then I go into like, oh look, here's where it's going.
Yeah, like I said, it was really interesting to sit there on the couch and have this conversation and just watch where I go, and I'm like, oh, look at that. Here's what I want to do, what I would have done in the past is just hang on. This conversation can wait. I'll be right back. I'll fix it. I got this. Which is not. Yes, the chainsaw needs to be fixed, but that's not what this is about. But it was really fascinating to watch it play out in real time in my mind.
Yeah, with me, it's fascinating to like, oh, look. What I find interesting is the chain between the trigger and then how convolutedly it connects to trust and then thus on safety. It's like, there's all these imaginary dotted lines, I guess, as you called them before, to where how do you go from chainsaw to loss of imaginary money to trusting somebody with their knowledge of the stool that you need in order to have this money, so the money, it has nothing to do with the chainsaw, and you not being able to get the chainsaw working has nothing to do with the money, but like the pain body collapses this random set of things into
some crazy narrative. Well, if he can't get the chainsaw working, then we don't have the chainsaw. And if we don't have a chainsaw, then we can't chop this stump down. If the stump's still there, then someone's going to see the house and nobody will ever want to rent this house. Therefore, we're never going to make money. We're going to die alone.
No, sure. But with me, it's bigger than that. It's the money, and then we don't have money. Then I don't have shelter, and I don't have food. And then the other aspect of it is trust.
Oh yeah, and if I can't trust him to maintain a chainsaw, what can I possibly trust him with?
Well, no, two aspects. Yeah, two aspects. One is, chainsaw, sump, ugly, prospects of rental, 0. 0 equals 0 rent money. 0 rent money equals no food.
You're not making money, you're losing money.
Well, in my case, like the losing doesn't even go into there. Somehow the not having goes into no food and no being able to pay our bills. Therefore, we're on the streets alone, and I'm subjecting my children to poverty, right? And then poverty equals us down on the streets of Agrabah somewhere.
So I have literally killed our children.
Yeah, I guess. So that is its own narrative. That's one narrative, right? And the second narrative that is actually part of this too is, in order to make sure that that first narrative doesn't happen, I have to be in control in order to offset the fact that there's situations where that narrative is a possibility. And so me trusting you to take care of the chainsaw is to prevent that narrative from happening. But if I trust you with the chainsaw, which is basically what this is, then guess what? I'm a moron for trusting you with this chainsaw, knowing that this was going to happen. And then look, I didn't even prevent myself from not trusting somebody. And then I'm a fool for trusting you because the stump is still there. And then this other narrative comes in.
And you saw it coming from the beginning.
I saw, well, it's the trust, right? I have to trust somebody to be able to do the tool, to use the tool, because I'm obviously not using a chainsaw. And then there's the trust.
Let's explore that more.
Why do we need to explore me not using a chainsaw?
I don't know.
I with me, I'm right-handed, and my right shoulder is messed up. So whatever the muscle it takes to yank, I don't have the yanking power. Probably. So I would not mind using the chainsaw that is electric, right? Hence me wanting us to have electric things, because then I can control them and I can feel safer.
Maybe Elon can get on that. He's good at making electric things.
Maybe I can just take all of my pain body problems and just divert them to Elon. Go, Elon, can you solve all of this so I don't have to trust people?
No more 2-cycle things. I need electric chainsaws. Need electric generator. Wait a minute. It's a big battery. It spins a generator, which makes other.
No, I mean, I think maybe Elon's pain body is the same pain body as mine. It's 2-cycle engines.
I never figured those out, so I built multi-billion-dollar companies to avoid it.
No, right? I mean, technically, if you look at everything that he has done, it has been to rid us of all gas products. So maybe he has some sort of pain body associated with, internal combustion and 2 cycles.
All this extra gas can go into producing electricity now. Problem solved. Yeah.
No, but do you see what I mean? So the trust then comes in and actually sits on top of the pain body that is already demise. Like demise is already the factor. My solution to demise is control, to where I control things. I cannot control 2-cycle engines. You can. So therefore, I trust you to control 2-cycle engines. And then the second I trust you and you fail at your 2-cycle engine expertise, then I'm triggered into, oh, look, how can I go trusting people? And, with me, trusting people, ... it is safety, So, no, it's the narrative. Oh my gosh, the narrative is so large. Think about this. We just spent an hour talking about narrative at a chainsaw event.
Right.
But it's hidden in there and it's layered. But once you start looking through it, it all does dissolve. And then, at the end of that conversation, you and I are like, oh, look, here's me drowning in my safety thing again. And here's you drowning into a lovable thing again.
But we both see it, and some portion of it has been released.
It just becomes funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
to some extent.
My release process ends up with it being looking back and going, that's ridiculous. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because the narrative doesn't hold.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even just talking about from a logical sense, because it never made sense from a logical sense. But
no, before you recognize this narrative, it does make sense because it holds the lock on you.
Yeah, the narrative doesn't make sense from a logical sense. But even when you think it through the first time, you're like, oh, but then you're like, I don't know. The whole thing, it was a great you know, acknowledging and recognizing and releasing process for me.
Yeah.
And in the end, it doesn't change what needs to, the physical actions that need to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure not going to bring that energy into them.
Yeah. But,
I'm not going to be to bring it back to the topic. I'm not going to be doing that.
Yeah. Next time we're going to have to do chainsaw work.
Doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to be pissed off and angry and trying to overcompensate in order to make sure that I pretend to love you, right?
Right. The chainsaw to some degree represented this, like, A, I have to prove to you that I can do it, and B, I have to make sure I don't fail you, which sound like the same thing, but they're almost two separate pain bodies somehow.
Yeah, I feel like my thing is two separate pain. Oh, it's the same pain body, but like this other aspect is layered on top.
Two different ways.
Yeah, it's layered. Well, it's almost like it's layered on top. There's this addition to it, right? The trust thing is kind of the hover. Like right. if the safety is the core, right? Because honestly, safety is usually the core. All the fear feeds into safety. That's what all of our fears usually deep down after all the whys actually come down to safety. Right, like even in your case, you terminated the term of not lovable, but sooner or later that not lovable somehow factors into safety.
Right, because if I'm not, love and safety are deeply intertwined in my psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But love has nothing to do with safety.
Right, has nothing to do with physical safety, but it's more like an emotional safety.
Yeah, but that's not love.
Right.
Right, so like the term that you use for love in that case is the pain body of love.
Yes.
That's not the love that
of course
you and I would share.
I should have clarified that. That's yes, it is not real love. It is this like nebulous
safety love.
Safety love, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But like I almost feel like that needs to have its own definition. Like we can if we're going to continue to use word love for like that open heart love.
Qualify. This is safety love. This is needy love. This is real love. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully, I mean, certainly right now, I'm not going to bring that energy, that juju, into any sort of chainsaw activity now or hopefully in the future, which is great because here's this whole thing, which I know, looking back, I've been bringing that into it whenever
Every time
I use
you use a chainsaw?
I think so.
Yeah.
Probably.
That's not good.
Probably.
Chainsaw's probably not even happy you bring that energy.
Probably not. I should apologize to the chainsaw.
Yeah.
And that's probably not helping it work at the same time. But who knows how long it would have taken me to realize that if we didn't have that discussion the other day.
Yeah. No, right. It's at some point it's like such a silly topic, but yet maybe the thing to point out is each one of the silly topics or silly fights or the silly conversation or silly triggers, in actuality, it's just like this deep, and triggering the deep wound that is currently, pumping open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I guess triggering. Yeah, I don't, maybe part of the recognition that I haven't done is actually going back and going, what triggered the safety thing? Like, because the chainsaw has not been working for quite a while. And maybe it's the fact that, there's a multitude of houses that are in the limbo. And that's the first time it has ever happened. But I'm like,
the stars aligned in a bad way on that, or the calendars aligned in a bad way, rather.
Yeah, but it's the first time that it has happened, and so there's like the unknown, right? Maybe the unknown is what's causing the trigger, and then because I'm responsible for fixing it, right? But at the same time, I feel the pressure to fix it, but at the same time, I don't want to make the wrong decision. And so, do you know what I mean? So maybe all of these little factors are just like these little triggers of like, oh, all of these unknowns. And so for me to be in that space, going back to being versus doing, right? For me to be in that space, it would be difficult to have the actual energy come in and that energy of higher guidance or higher perspective, and to actually take care of it and smooth it all out and have things happen on its own would be very difficult if I'm actively doing all the things out of fear or out of a pain body or triggers. Do you know what I mean? Like I could feel Like, oh, look, I'm just tensing up about the idea of like, oh,
Yeah. But recognizing that is the first step, and then you can, start working on releasing it.
yeah. Yeah. Not sure how productive this was, but
I mean, in a sense, it was a repeat of the last episode with here are issues and here's where they go. But I don't know how much we talked about doing versus being. And it was kind of all about doing versus being because,
well, no,
when you're doing it, you're
doing it from the pain,
doing, yeah.
blindly from the pain, and that's the net drain down. And being is that drain stops, and you don't have to do anything at all in order to have the opposite force, which is actually influx.
Yeah, like at this moment, I know how I would have felt about going to get the chainsaw. I would have been this anxious. I need to get it to work because I need to get this stuff working. And now it's this excitement about I'm going to go use it and do the things I need to do when it is completely disconnected from you or, making sure that you're happy is the wrong word, soothed. And it isn't about soothing me. It's just a thing that has to be done. I'm just excited about doing it.
Yeah. But you know what, this is what I want to point out at the end, I guess, is the energy that the being has versus the doing from the pain body.
Yeah. It's like a positive bring love into it energy versus a sometimes obligated, I have to, I don't want to, it needs to be done. It may still, quote, need to be done, but there is a very positive aspect to one versus a negative or draining aspect on the other. To me, when I do things for the exact same thing for a quote, bad reason versus a quote, good reason. That's a weird way to word it, but for a pain body reason versus a almost no reason.
Yeah. Like, so being does have that no reason. But what I want to point out is this is how it feels for me, and let me know if this is how it feels for you. But if it's doing, right, and then if we classify doing out of a pain body, I can feel my three-dimensional self in that space, and I can feel the net energy that I have coming into it. And then I can feel the pain body of it, like densifying it and draining everything out of it and causing it to almost spiral down into a worse situation that it could have been. Do you know what I mean? If the chainsaw is at the top and the chainsaw is actually what we're looking at, the outcomes of the chainsaw or the outcome of, the stumps is actually this net spiral down.
Yes.
Right. And so I can actually feel it. I can feel my responsibility. Maybe this is what's important to say. I can feel that I'm responsible for taking this concept and taking it from the plane of possibility and the plane of good, bad, whatever, just the plane of possibility, and defining that moment or defining this concept into an outcome of negativity, like this drain down, right? Does that make sense? Like I can actually feel the plane of possibility exhausting itself into a collapse.
Yes.
Outcome of this is not going to go well.
Collapse. That's a good way to word it. Because it is like almost like a quantum collapse. It is like, well, this is just going to go to shit, as opposed to this opens up infinite possibilities.
Yeah. Remember when we were in Denver and we were having cacao, we did not record that, but that's what we're talking about. Every possibility is collapsing into its potential outcome. Maybe that's another episode that we need to do. Is how, quantum collapsing works. I don't know. Anyway, so I can feel the plane, right? And then the pain body in this case, that is, let's say, chainsaw, right? But it's everything that we just talked about, collapses itself into the outcome that is not the greatest. It's just the density that it represents, the stuckness that is right there. And then if I'm on the same plane and if I'm not doing out of the pain body, right? If I move away from the pain body, and then in this case, we're dealing with a stump, right? And then you're there with or without the chainsaw, and I'm there and I'm looking at the stump. The situation, I almost feel like, is being reached at and solved away from me. Like the person who is solving this situation is the energy outside of my reach. The potentiality of energy to solve this is originating from somewhere other than I'm familiar with, which is my 3-dimensional density of collapse.
Okay. In order to solve it in a good way versus a bad way.
In order just to allow it to be what it needs to be, as opposed to defining the collapse point.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I guess maybe the reason why I'm so adamant about it, I'm saying the same thing, but I'm actually seeing it energetically where the energy comes from.
So, it's coming from the pain body, or it's coming from, I guess, higher self, or just being open, or not the lack of it coming from the pain body, maybe.
The pain body causes the situation to collapse into its density, into an outcome that is predetermined by the pain body that is being activated through.
Especially a blind, active pain body.
Yes.
But but recognizing the pain body, recognizing what you're being triggered by, and, even some degree of releasing it, or at least going, okay, look at that. That's in here. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And, that's me. That's there. But I am deciding that I'm not going to let that run the show, at least in this instance, at least right now, at least with this chainsaw, it's there. But you know what? I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to bring a new positive energy to this chainsaw situation.
Well, that's the thing is the idea behind bringing negative energy. And when my mom said, oh, you don't want to do this with negative energy because you don't want to do in this fucked up, cranky mode because it's going to bring negative energy to me as a child. At the time, I agreed with her, right? And I knew it was the truth. But to a naked eye, most humans would interpret it, therefore, I have to bring positive energy into it.
You just need to not bring negative energy.
But that is wrong. That is not what the intention here is. When you unwire and uncover your whole, right, that is a quantum collapse of this particular chainsaw scenario into one outcome, you actually open up to the potentials of all energy, and you don't have to bring any energy into it at all. That is what I want to point out. The opposite solution to it not turning into a clusterfuck of shit whenever you're cranky and your pain body is triggered is not to come in there and try to offer the opposite thereof.
Which is often forced if you're trying to do that.
Yes, maybe.
Artificial, forced.
Yes.
It's all going to be fine.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to say is that you have to, when you acknowledge it, it doesn't go into, everything is great. Yeah, it doesn't go into that. It just goes into a possibility.
Yeah, it opens up into possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I will touch on this today, but when we were just traveling last week, one of the insights that had come to me that maybe we'll have a whole podcast on is the Schrodinger's cat in the box, right? The cat exists in all points of form before the box is open, right? But the second you open the box and you see the situation through the eyes of your determination, which in this case is the pain body of, oh, I'm unsafe and I can't trust people, or if it's, oh, look, I'm not triggered right now, so therefore I'm going to let the universe decide the circumstances of this, or your higher self decide the circumstances of this. Depending on which energy you hold, when you open that box, the situation will collapse into cat being alive or being dead, right? In this case, the chainsaw working or chainsaw not working, or, the stump still being there and then it being the end of the world, or the stump, can be looked at as an art piece that actually doesn't change anything at all.
Put some Christmas lights around it. salt.
And you're loved.
I'm loved. See? I brought beauty to the world. Hang up with a couple of those little balls on it.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, my gosh, I can't wait to have this house.
Yeah, no. So it's
Art piece.
huh?
Art piece.
The art piece. What is it? Installation.
Installation rooms.
If anybody has not seen Norseman, I don't even know what network it would be on these days. It was an old
Link in
show.
the show notes.
Hmm?
Link in the show notes.
Oh my
that
gosh.
Great show.
It's probably at the top of
It's way up there.
of my most favorite TV shows ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's priceless. Yeah. I mean, there's that. We just talked about there's that. There's the Flight of Conchords. There's the What We Do in the Shadows.
Wellington Paranormal.
No Activity.
No Activity. Oh, No Activity was good.
And all of them are foreign shows. They're not American shows.
Yeah. Most of those are from
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah, I guess it's then the Norseman is Finnish.
Oh, it's Finnish or it's not Icelandic, is it?
I don't know.
They're Vikings. But good stuff.
No, it's very good. Anyway. So yeah.
Yeah.
Being versus doing. I mean, I think that's the only thing that can narrow it down is that the doing
comes from a pain body.
The doing comes from a pain body. It is kind of like a pit of doomsday prophecies that come true based on your own making. And the doing without the pit just becomes the being.
Yeah.
And that being reaches, like, functions on its own wavelength.
Yeah.
Like the way, just the where it comes from is infinitely different.
And from the outside, it probably looks similar or maybe even the same, though you'll probably get better results from the being instead of the doing.
Yeah. With me, it is very easy for me to some extent, especially with some people, to come across them and I can see the frequency of their functionality and I can see who's doing and who is being. Do you know what I mean? Especially with some people, it's obvious. I mean, some
people only do.
Most people only do, right? But sometimes, I mean, I think it's obvious. I think all of us have had a moment where we came into a situation and then somebody was doing something and they were doing it. And there was zero question that this was like, oh, this is...
They're in do mode.
Yeah, they're in a very do mode. And then very like, nah. And then, that nah is a pain body trigger.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you saw those people who are just like really determined to do it, they're in the pain body and their doing is reflection of the pain body. So you can see how that looks like. You don't have to be psychic to be able to read people's energy in order to see some of those people. But to that same extent, I can see lesser versions, because it trickles all the way down into even like small things.
Yeah.
Just the way you polish your silverware or something, or the way you clean your counters.
Speaking of which.
Yeah, right.
Got a guest coming over, better clean him.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Otherwise they won't think that the house is clean and then I won't be loved. Actually, that isn't mine with cleanliness.
I have a trigger with cleanliness. So cleanliness leads to things being clean. Things being clean leads to things being nice. Things being nice leads to... I mean, one, on the right level of things, I can feel the energetic difference between a house being clean and a house not being clean.
Yeah, but that's not...
Yeah, but if I'm cleaning from the pain, I almost don't want to dive into that pain body right now in order to discover it. Just because if I'm ready...
Next time you're in it.
Yeah, maybe.
Take a peek.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's a wrap.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.